I'm Steve Scott. Let's talk hop.
Hi. Hey, I hope you like these videos. If you'd like to learn more about anything I talk about here, or really anything related to human and organizational performance, please contact me. My info is on the description below the video, and I'll show it again at the end of the clip. So earlier, we talked about the 5 human performance principles, and in subsequent videos, I've been going into more detail about each one of them. So today, I'm going to talk about human performance principle number 4. Context influences behavior. And very closely correlated to that, systems drive outcomes. Context influences behavior, systems drive outcomes. What does that mean? Let me give you a quick example. How many of you remember this event? A few years ago at the Cincinnati Zoo in the United States, a 4-year-old child got into the gorilla enclosure with a 400-pound male gorilla. And ultimately, the gorilla had to be killed to save the child. You remember that event? Now, be honest. How many of you, when you heard that, your initial reaction was bad parent? The parent had to be doing something careless. They had to not pay enough attention or something in order for something so bad to happen, right? Because if all we know is a mom or a dad lost track of their kid and he got inside the gorilla enclosure, what are we going to do? We're going to blame the mom or dad for being a bad parent and move on. In fact, the Cincinnati Police Department opened an investigation into the family to see if they could charge them with some sort of neglect. Do you remember hearing the whole story about the mom who was involved in this? She was at the zoo by herself. She was the only adult with the 4-year-old and a couple other kids. So she had been keeping a pretty close hold on the 4-year-old because if you've ever had a 4-year-old boy, they can be a handful. She took her hands off the 4-year-old for just a couple minutes to take pictures of the other kids. Now, does that seem like reckless behavior or neglectful behavior or something bad parents do? Or does that seem like something probably all of us that have kids have done at one time or another? Right? So, understanding the context, why people do what they do at the time they do it, helps us to understand the event. If we just look at the outcome, we don't understand what drove that person to do what they did. And therefore, we're probably going to fix the wrong stuff. So, context influences behavior. Systems drive outcomes. So when that 4-year-old was let go of for just a few seconds, he was able to get into the gorilla enclosure literally in a matter of seconds because the system was pretty weak. Do you remember what the barrier looked like between the 4-year-old and the gorilla when that happened? Here's what it looked like. A couple strands of wire, small piece of pipe, all of it maybe a foot above the ground, 14 inches, something like that. In fact, someone at the zoo was quoted as saying, this enclosure was not designed to keep 4-year-olds out. It was designed to keep gorillas in. The trend with these exhibits had been to minimize the barriers in order to improve the viewing experience for the public. So that system was really fragile. That barrier was really weak so that when a mom did something pretty predictable that probably happens all the time, she let go of a 4-year-old boy, in a matter of a few seconds, he was able to defeat that barrier and get into the gorilla enclosure. Systems drive outcomes. So what did the zoo end up doing? Ultimately, they built a better barrier so that it would be harder for 4-year-olds, which are going to be there, it would be harder for them to get into the gorilla enclosure. Context influences behavior, systems drive outcomes. Principle number 4. Hope you like this. If you want to hear more, please get a hold of me. Here's my contact info. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.